And to make sense of what the president's address entailed, we are now joined via Skype by the Wits University Associate Professor William Gumede. Professor Gumede, very good evening to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Evening.
Professor, what's your understanding of the president's address? Do you get the sense that the lockdown will be postponed indefinitely?
I've got a problem with the sound from you, but what I think I could hear from you was in terms of the lockdown will be postponed indefinitely. No, I don't think that's the case. What is happening is a gradual lifting of restrictions. So, I mean, level 4 means, level 5 is where we are now, very, very strict conditions. Level 4 will be an easing, very selective easing, bringing some sectors into the economy, but still some of the restrictions, but not as tight as previously. Now, this is a very important announcement because we cannot, the government cannot just automatically lift the lockdown, because that will create much more chaos and potentially will cause much more harm in terms of the virus spreading.
The fact that he said some businesses will be allowed to operate, but under very strict conditions, that wasn't clear as to when that will be, and he didn't give any timelines as to when these levels, in as much as he went into greater detail outlining some of these levels, but the timelines were not given. That's what South Africans needed to hear.
No, I think what now needs to happen is there needs to be a consultation now with different sectors of how, which sectors, so different sectors and companies will have to argue the case, why they are crucial to the economy and why they should benefit from, a selective lifting of the restrictions. So I think, what the president tried to do tonight was really give the broad guidance of what's going to happen. So the details still have to be worked out with different sectors of the economy.
Well, no doubt each and every business is vital to the economy, be it in the macro or the micro level, be it in the formal or the informal sector. And I suppose that will be a very, very tough balancing act for the president to decide on which sector will open first. And I guess that it'll open a can of worms, because each and every company will give, or rather each and every sector will give a very strong case as to how significant they are to the economy.
Absolutely, it's very, very difficult, and that is why it is so important that the companies themselves also have to be part of the consultation process. It cannot just be government deciding, which companies, it has to be a partnership, in consultation. Now, the first, the priority has to be, to start off with, companies critical to the economy, strategic to the economy. And then secondly, in terms of companies with large number of jobs. And then, thirdly, companies that are vulnerable, to the lockdown. So, so there has to be a range of importance and priority, strategic importance to the economy, the number of jobs. Thirdly, whether, sectors that's absolutely vulnerable, and, if we don't lift the restrictions, there'll be mass collapse.
And, Professor, focusing on the health challenges and overlooking the economic aspects will result in economic costs. I mean, the stagnation of the economy will all doubt will sabotage other facets of the social fabric, like the health sector, for instance, because if the government does not have money to provide for the health sector, then all hell will break loose. Your thoughts?
No, absolutely. That is why, I mean, the decision of which companies are going to be allowed to open up is going to be very crucial, that the right decisions are are made. That is why it is so important that that it must be a partnership decision. It cannot be, you can't just have government sitting at the top and decide on the economy, because government don't always have their bird's eye view. So there has to be, business has to come together with government to decide on the level which companies should be allowed to start to operate.
In as much as the president did very well in engaging the public, giving regular updates as to the government's plans of curbing the coronavirus on the one hand and ensuring the reinvigoration of the economy on the other hand. But then I suppose that his addresses are not very clear when it comes to the micro issues of society in terms of the small businesses. Like on Tuesday, he did announce a stimulus plan and, amongst other things, it'll benefit some of the small businesses. But then as to when these businesses will benefit from this stimulus package, it's not very clear, because the president, I know, that will still call, or rather appoint, a committee that will see the disbursement of these funds. And in the meantime, what should be happening to these small businesses?
Really the challenge really is now is that small business appear not to have been fully consulted. The way this economy is structured is a really large part of the economy is small business, informal business, and so on. Now, in the package, there's no real clarity of how they're going to benefit. So my big worry really is execution from government side. The money is there now. How to take the money effectively to the small business, the informal sector, and then also to the unemployed and the poor. And it's not only the money, for example, how to bring the food logistically to the people that need it. And we know, the problem the last decades of the South African government has been the state has been absolutely ineffective. So, so the execution really, if the execution is not right in implementing this emergency coronavirus package, we're really going to have a problem. So, a way out of this dilemma of the state not having the capacity or the personnel with the expertise and so on, is to bring in small business must also be part of the delivery, not only receiving let's say money, but there has to be part of the delivery process. And also civil society must be part of the delivery, the execution process, because we cannot allow government on its own to try to execute. We've just seen, for example, your unemployment insurance fund. There's little capacity to deal with, the normal processes when we didn't have the coronavirus crisis. Now we have the coronavirus and the crisis, and now a lot of people have to apply to the unemployment insurance fund, but the capacity is not there, for that entity to quickly deliver the money for people that need it really desperately and very quickly.
And in terms of boosting the economy, so many organizations and institutions are now coming to the party, and notably the South African Reserve Bank, which has recently dropped its repo rate by 100 basis points to 7.5% in March, and buying government bonds and allowing other banks as well to drop their reserve levels. But then the National Treasury's response to COVID-19 hasn't been welcomed. In fact, it's been heavily criticized. So what was the expectation? How was the National Treasury expected to respond to COVID-19?
I think people put too much expectations on the National Treasury to respond. I think it's not only the National Treasury. We have to look at all of the state entities. Then we have to look at all of the private sector. Then we have to look at, small business, civil society. So a response is collectively. So the National Treasury, doesn't have the golden key to unlock everything. So what it does, it support, what government's program. So, everything starts with a presidency, and the presidency coordinating not only the Treasury to deliver, but all of the other institutions. And so on. So I think just to focus on the Treasury itself, I mean, the Treasury is only a technical government department in charge of the finances, but all of these decisions are political decisions. So once a political decision has been made and instructions is given by government and to the Treasury, to the department, then the Treasury will deliver on the decisions made by government or, by the president.
It's safe to say, Professor, that this coronavirus pandemic has essentially compromised the entire government machinery. I mean, the education sector has been severely affected. The economy has been severely affected. And, even Finance Minister Tito Mbowene's February statement, I don't think that it is relevant at this point. So what do you suggest he does? Does he have to make spending amendments in his October midterm budget policy statement, or does Parliament have to call an emergency budget?
Absolutely, So the budget of the past, all, the policies of the past, all of those things we have to throw away now, and we have to restart. Even the ideological things, arguments are gone now, because in the greatest crisis of our generation, we can't use the old ideological arguments. We can't use the old economic models. We have to rethink new models now. So that means even the budget, the previous budget that the finance minister put together, that's totally irrelevant now. Now there has to be imagination to create a whole new budget and to start thinking about whole new fiscal policies, monetary policies, to deal with the post-corona crisis economically. So we can't use the same pre-corona fiscal policy, monetary policy, budget frameworks and so on. We really have to throw it away now. And we can't also use the same ideology. The last decade in our country, there's been a contestation, over economic different type of policies. We have to throw that away now, and we have to rethink what we now need to do going forward to save the economy, not only to save the economy, but to use this crisis as a catalyst to grow the economy.
All right, Professor, thank you so much. No doubt that coronavirus has pressed that reset button on the country's social and legal and as well as economic fabric. And the jury's still out on how the government will manage pressing that restart button. Professor William, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. That was Wits University Associate Professor William Gumede joining us via Skype.